The focus of this lesson is the economic concept of supply. Understanding supply is fundamental in any economics course. Buyers and sellers must agree on a price and what and how much is to be produced. The supply curve provides the producer's or seller's perspective. Producers manufacture a product because they believe they can sell it at a profit. The higher the price, the higher the profit. Therefore, it makes sense that producers would be willing to manufacture more of a product at higher prices, assuming that people would purchase their product. The law of supply states that there is a direct relationship between the price of a good or service and the amount the producer is willing to supply. In other words, as the price of a good or service increases, more will be supplied to the market, with everything else being held constant. Also, as the price of a good falls, producers are willing to supply less. Let's take a look at babysitting in the Oak Grove community. Specifically, let's look at Jane. Jane's a high school student. She wants to earn a little bit extra money to have a good time with, and she has a little babysitting service. And we can look at Jane's individual supply schedule. This gives us, at $4 an hour, Jane would only be willing to babysit 13 hours a month. That's probably just for her family. She doesn't earn much. She'd rather hang out with her buddies than be paid $4 an hour. But if we increase the price of babysitting to $7 an hour, well, hey, Jane would be okay with babysitting 32 hours a month. She'd give up maybe a TV show, but not hang out as much with her friends, that type of thing. But man, if we start getting up to $9 an hour, she'd babysit 37 hours per month. She'd be willing to give up some time over the weekends, hang out a little bit less with her friends if she could get $9 an hour. So we see that the law of supply applies. As the price of babysitting increases, the quantity of hours that Jane is willing to babysit also increases. Now we can take the data from the supply schedule and plot it on Jane's supply curve. Here again we see that at $4, she babysits 13 hours. And then at $7 an hour, she babysits 32. And finally at 9, we're up to 37 hours. So we can see again the relationship where the higher the price, the more hours Jane is willing to babysit. Now it's important to know that it's customary whenever you plot a supply curve that you have the price on the vertical axis and the quantity over a period of time on the horizontal axis. And you'll see that in all of the supply and demand curves that are graphed in economics. It's also important to note that this is Jane's individual supply curve for babysitting. And Jane is just one person providing that service. But we'll also see that there's a market supply. There are a lot of babysitters in Oak Grove. And if we add up all of their individual supply curves, we'll come up with what we call the market supply curve for the Oak Grove community. One other thing. Notice when I say this, that other things are basically the same. In other words, we don't have anything like a new company comes in that can offer Jane a job in something other than babysitting. We don't have any direct competition that will impact her ability to do this. So as a result, the only thing that impacts the number of hours in this particular case that Jane is willing to babysit is basically the price. And here we see that there's a movement along the supply curve. And when there's a movement along the supply curve, economists call that a change in the quantity supplied. In another lesson, we'll learn that the supply curve itself can be impacted by things like, an improvement in technology, or perhaps the price of gasoline goes way up and Jane doesn't want to drive as far to her next job. And this will impact her willingness to babysit at any price. And that's called a change in supply. But here we're talking about just a movement along the supply curve, which is a change in the quantity supplied. To summarize, producers are represented by the supply curve. And as prices increase, the manufacturers or producers are willing to provide more to the market, assuming they will be bought. And as prices drop, producers will cut back on their production. Thank you. To learn more about this lesson and other important economic concepts, please visit our website at higherrockeducation.com. Thank you.